You're listening to the Valley Labor Report with David Story and Jacob Morrison.
All right, folks, welcome back. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison, here with my co-host, David Story. On the line, we've got Nelson from Dixieland of the Proletariat Podcast. Nelson, you still on the line?
I'm still here.
Very good. And now we have got workers from, or former workers from No Evil Foods. We've got John and Megan and Courtney. Y'all on the line?
Hey.
Wonderful. It worked.
Very good.
Amazing.
Fantastic. All right. So here's gonna set it up just a little bit, and then John and Megan and y'all, I'll give it to you. No Evil Foods is a vegan grocery store kind of thing in North Carolina. Is that right?
They are a plant meat production company, so they're not a store. They actually just produce the plant meat.
Gotcha, man.
Jacob does terrible. Absolutely. Apparently, he hasn't listened to the Working podcast or the Dixieland of the Proletariat podcast. Good Lord, man, come on.
So they work. Y'all worked there, and y'all wanted to, form a union. And y'all were basically fired for your organizing. So start off with, tell us about No Evil Foods and like what is their deal? What is No Evil Foods, and how do they present themselves to the public?
Yeah, either one can go.
So essentially, No Evil Foods, they market themselves as though they're this super lefty, progressive, socialist company. They have product names like Comrade Cluck and, up until recently, El Zapatista Chorizo. They basically market themselves as these far lefty, progressive, anti-pollution, revolutionary. Yeah, they even describe themselves as revolutionaries. Revolutionary leaders in the new food movement, as far as being plant-based. And it just doesn't really match up with what we actually experienced working there.
Right.
And to set the stage, basically what the entire thing was surrounding was, y'all went to work at No Evil Foods because it's vegetarian. It's they present a good front, seeming to help the environment, seeming to provide more healthy foods, things like that. But then as you started working there, from what I've heard listening to Working Peoples and to Dixieland, we got into the pandemic. There were issues during the pandemic with the way that they were treating y'all. As far as your health goes, as far as your safety goes, and you guys decided that it may be time to organize a union, and you began realizing that maybe they weren't quite aligned with your values as much as what they like to portray themselves as. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And what were some of those issues that originally made you think like, we need a union here? What were some of those? Tell us about that, because the audience here, a lot of them probably haven't listened to the Working People podcast that y'all were on, or even the Dixieland of the Proletariat podcast that y'all were on.
So the union drive actually started, I think, before any of us got there. Essentially, what happened was people who had been there for years saw all of these like rapid changes being made and wanted more of a say in what was going on in the workplace, as far as my understanding goes. And that's when union reps were actually contacted. And what management ended up doing was changing the schedule from a 4-day work week to a 5-day work week. And that resulted in a large portion of the staff quitting, who had initially started the union drive, because they had built their lives around this schedule, and all of a sudden they were changing it. Part of the problem right there. But what ended up happening was once all of those people quit, they pretty much didn't have the union drive going super strong there until somebody who had been there kind of picked up the torch and started talking to new people, namely us, and just kind of picked up that momentum that had been going on from before we were there. And that's kind of how it really all got started. And there were things here and there, like different safety concerns as far as some of the equipment goes and as far as training goes. And those of us who were very, very open to the idea of unionization from the start were all about getting this union in here to improve those things.
It's kind of strange. They didn't want they didn't want a union in their workplace. So and of course that's not strange at all. I'm being hypocritical, but what we constantly talk about is the union. The union is not some big boogeyman from the outside. The union is basically the workers in the workplace having a say in what they are producing and their working conditions every day. So they began. I guess there was a big union drive before. They cut some of the workforce down, or some of the workforce left. But luckily, I say luckily, I don't know. There's still not a union in there, but I hope that they're still working on it. But luckily, one of the employees that left started discussing with y'all about the possibilities of organizing, and then from that point on. Where because I followed the case, but no one on the radio, and apparently Jacob hadn't either. From that point on, where did we end up? Because there's some terrible things that happened but in the end, y'all kind of won out. What happened during this organizing drive?
So basically what happened was we picked up like Megan said, we kind of picked up the torch and picked up where everybody had left off previously with the union drive. And so January rolls around, January of this year, and they basically, they knew that a union drive was coming. I'm sure people had gone back and told them. And so what they ended up doing is there was just one day where I came into work and the entire warehouse was plastered with these posters about how union authorization cards are like legally binding documents, and the word dues was mentioned like 1,000 times on this paper. And so the propaganda started with these little like posters that went up all over the warehouse. But the real thing that they did that really turned the tables on us was these mandatory anti-union meetings, and that was probably the most traumatic part of the whole experience. And these anti-union meetings are, if we're going to talk about anything as far as what people need to know before they start a union drive, it's these meetings, because these meetings, as I'm sure you know, are so common, and the rhetoric at these meetings is so common, and
that's
debunking the claims and what they say at these meetings is so essential to helping future organizers figure out what to expect before
some inoculation.
Right. Right. And we've got those clips queued up. So whenever, whenever you want us to play one of them and where you want us to play it, let us know the name of the clip and we'll start playing it. But, just talk to us a little bit, give us what are these meetings like? How do they present them and what happens in these meetings?
So essentially what they did is they would, what they would do is they would take first shift and second shift, and they would have two separate meetings each day. They would stop production, so they would cut into their profits to have these meetings. They would stop production in the middle of the shift, and they would shove just about 20 to 25 of us in a tiny room that was maybe meant for 15 people tops, and just tell us how aggressive, and they would aggressively tell us, how bad unions are, and they would throw all kinds of little talking points in there about how, collective bargaining, the process in which you decide a contract with your employers. They would talk about how nothing is guaranteed. You could lose all the benefits that you even have now. Essentially, they were driving home that nothing is guaranteed, and this union is not guaranteed to help you, which historically isn't really all that accurate. Like, it's something that's possible, but everything was done in a very misleading way. They would give us fractions of articles talking about different issues within the UFCW. That was the union we were trying to organize with at the time. They would say, oh, look at them, they had all these embezzlement issues, not really explaining that these people were held accountable, different things like that. They played up on fears of sexual harassment, saying, oh, well, the union, they don't have to take any calls that they don't want. And it was just a lot of gaslighting the entire time.
Right. And, that's not even to discount the fact that there are, unions, like I said, people, but a lot of people know that I'm a big union advocate, like in my personal life. And so they'll talk to me about it sometimes, and they'll bring up stuff like that. They'll bring up things like, oh, well, there was this one time when this one person who happened to be in a union did something bad related to the union. And I'm like, look, unions are human institutions. Unions have people in them. Anytime you get folks in anything, you're going to mess it up. I mean, like there's no such thing as like a perfect institution. There's no such thing as a perfect organization. You're going to have issues. The question is, does it help you? The question is, will my life be better if I have a union or if I don't? And the answer is always your life is gonna be better if you have a union where you work. I mean, it's just that simple. And then after that, after you answer that simple question, then you start to get into like, okay, there are issues. Maybe there are some people that have got a really good, that they've got a really good setup with their union and they don't have any issues, and that's great. And that's but there are other people that after you answer that first question, then you're saying, okay, let me look at these issues and let me as a member, as an active participant in my life and in my society and on my job, in my workplace, let me see how I can go to make it better. Just because there are issues doesn't mean that you just like throw the baby out with the bathwater. You throw out the bathwater and you keep the baby and then you clean the baby.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Absolutely, 100%. That is spot on because in one of those clips. Oh,
sorry.
In one of those clips that we had sent you, I actually point this out to one of the owners, Deidre. I explained to her that, a lot of these problems that you're talking about are societal and they're not really indicative of, how a union would necessarily act here and how we would in turn be able to respond to it. Because even if you're upset with your union rep, and you're upset with the organization in general, as workers, you're able to combat all of that. There's processes for this. Right. And, they just completely kind of sidestepped all of that and continued to gaslight us about how a union wouldn't guarantee anything for us.
Yeah, right. And it's unfortunate that, a lot of times unions in general, and especially, me going in as an organizer in different areas, you get this pushback that, this thought that the union thugs and their strong arms and they're going to push you into doing things, and the fact of the matter is, in every organizing drive I've been that I've helped in, without every time the company has brought people in, they have done these closed door sessions, and they're really. They're the epitome of the union thug, except for they're the company thug, and they refuse to let anybody walk out. Right. They generally refuse to let anybody ask questions because they know questions will bring some of their lies to light. But also, one of the things that I noticed that y'all discussed in one of the other podcasts was the anxiety-ridden meetings. That people have a difficult time sitting in these meetings and being forced, kind of preached at like dogs. And it's terrible. It's really terrible.
Well, yes, and those meetings, like we've been talking about the meetings. Tell us one of the clips that you want us to play that really kind of gets at the heart of the matter. Like, what's one of them that you would want to highlight?
I'm just not sure how it's labeled. It's the one with Phaedra Shadell. She's one of the owners, and she's talking about sexual harassment, and that really just kind of encapsulates the fears that they use to kind of sway people as far as voting against the union.
Yeah. So the one that Megan was talking about was basically Phaedra Shadell. She's the CCO and one of the co-founders of No Evil Foods. And she was talking about how if the union comes in, they could basically make it easier for sexual harassers to get away with sexual harassment. And so that was the clip that Megan had been talking about. But
what about if you come to the union with complaints that you're being harassed or discriminated against by coworkers? What can the union do about that? This is an area that even labor advocates realize that there's a real problem. What tends to happen is that an employee is harassed by their coworker, the employee complains to management, management investigates the allegations. If management concludes that the harassment occurred, then the company will terminate their harasser. The issue comes then when the terminated employee asks the union to file a grievance, and the union agrees, and then the union, the one that also represents the victim, and the one that gets the victim's dues every month, starts arguing with the company and saying that the punishment was too harsh, and that the harasser should be reinstated. The union's just doing what the union has a right to do. That's what it's supposed to do. But it's pretty uncomfortable for a lot of victims in the membership.
I'm jumping in here right now because we did not address this on the live show. We didn't play this clip on the live show, so we didn't address it since we didn't play the clip. But I did want to address it for our audience online. And so what she said here was that essentially, if you've got sexual harassment in the workplace, you are going to have to deal with the union representing your harasser, your assaulter, your rapist. This is not true. The union is under no legal obligation to represent a worker who has done poorly. The union is obligated by law to represent every worker regardless of the civil rights protections. We cannot not represent a worker due to race prejudice or sex prejudice, religious prejudice, etc., etc. Unions do not have to represent people who have verifiably assaulted their coworkers and our members. That is not true. And unions, there are lots of trainings that union stewards will go through to ensure that they know the proper procedures for dealing with member-to-member harassment, etc. So, she presents this like it is necessary for the union to represent harassers. And that's just not true. That's just not true. So I wanted to address that since we didn't talk about it a lot on the show, but I did want to play the clip since she mentioned it. So I played the clip. I addressed those claims. Back to the show.
I'm just trying to remember the other ones that I had sent. There were so many.
There was like 4. Yeah, there was. Let's see here.
Yeah, what were he's going to tell us the names of them.
One of the ones that really stuck out to me was the capital investors. If you guys organize, it's really terrible for us to get any more money because they don't want to deal. They don't want to deal with people that want to make a living wage.
Yeah, and so that last the clip that you're talking about is from Mike Walliansky. He's the CEO. And so that last speech, so they gave us, there were several speeches that they had basically given the workers. One of them was from the VP of manufacturing. Another one was from the plant manager. And then there was one from Mike, and then there was one from Stager. So they're the two founders. And the last speech that Mike gave was probably like the worst one because I think it really just turned the tide on everything. It scared people more than I think any of the other ones did because he talked about basically people losing their jobs, possibly losing their jobs. And
essentially saying he didn't know what investors would do if this union went through and how they would run the other direction if he was to come across this on his desk and we were unionized.
So why am I making all these points about the importance of investment dollars? Well, because it's a very real risk that having a union at No Evil Foods will greatly impact our ability to continue raising capital, which risks the survival of our business. To be frank, I had one of our current investors say this week, I've seen hundreds of companies come across my desk, and I have never seen an investment in a unionized startup, especially not at this stage. If I was looking at this business for the first time, I would run the other way. Now, we don't know what's going to happen, but we're not the only option investors like this have, and we do need capital to grow. It's not optional. Please understand that I have no control over what investors will do.
Right. And that's, threatening job loss, that's constant. Illegal.
It's
constant. But it's constant. Yeah, it's illegal, but it's constant. And so they'll talk about, that there's so many different tricks that they have. And was there any others that you wanted to highlight? And then after that, I want to throw it to Nelson because he's got some good stories about what happened with those clips. But were there any others that you wanted to highlight? The content of it really quick.
I was gonna just say if Courtney is here, she actually had an experience. But me and Megan were on second shift. She was on first, so she could probably speak more to that.
Okay, no, she's not on the line right now. I don't know if she's listening, but I hadn't been able to. She called in, and I hit the wrong button. I tried to put her on the air, and I hit drop her. So she's gone. So if she's listening, she can call back in. But no, she's not on the line right now.
Yeah.
Okay,
Nelson.
Yeah, so this is not the first interview that y'all have given. Y'all been on Working People's podcast, you've been on Dixieland of the Proletariat podcast, and they have been able to figure out this fancy technology so that they can play the stuff on their
show. I mean, they record.
Yeah, they're recording. So they
a little bit. It's a little bit different technology when you got 2 or 3 days to sit down and edit everything and blend it together, as opposed to trying to throw all this together on live.
So
not only on the radio, but on Facebook, YouTube, and everything else.
Yeah. So they had the clips. And Nelson, what did No Evil Foods do to y'all playing those clips? What happened to y'all?
They did what rich people do best, and they tried to intimidate us with their lawyers, and tried to say that the audio clips were somehow copyright to them, even though North Carolina it's one of those states where you don't have to get the consent of the person you're recording, whatnot. But so we added the files to the episode, and they contacted the company that we host our podcast with and tried to get the episode taken down. And
they did get it taken down.
They were not.
Well, I know on Working People's pod they got it taken down. Maybe on yours, yours somehow slipped under the rug.
I think that so the first time we host with Libsyn, so they contacted Libsyn, and with Libsyn, thank goodness you talked to an actual real person. So we were able to get up with them. Like, it was a coordinated effort. I podcast the people, the guys we're talking to now from No Evil Foods, and Working People's Pod, a number of people came together, and we were like, look, this is ridiculous. We wrote them, and we told them, everything, messaged the guy at Libsyn was like, hey, this is frivolous, this is stupid, etc. And it turned out that I don't know, Megan, y'all could go into like how they basically use like a fake. They tried to use y'all's Twitter handle like as an alias to try to circumvent, like think that they were being sneaky, and basically, so they tried to get it taken down, and Libsyn was just like, yeah, this is stupid, and they sided with us, the copyright complaint, and we were able to get the episode back up. They did the same thing with SoundCloud because we had to upload differently to SoundCloud. And with SoundCloud, you don't talk to a human being, and their customer service is horrible. And so we ended up just, it wasn't put back on SoundCloud. We ended up taking our podcast down on SoundCloud altogether because we didn't want to deal with them.
What's strange?
But yeah.
What's strange is the fact that if there's nothing wrong with these thuggish, closed door corporate meetings, and they're telling the truth about the union, and they're telling the truth about what's going to happen with the union, it makes no sense to me. Why don't you want this out? That seems like perfectly good sense. Hey, we need to get this information out to everybody so everybody can know what's going on, but yet they're doing everything they can to hide it, to cover everything up, and it makes you wonder. Somebody with a little bit of sense, what the hell do y'all want to hide? What is there to hide if you're telling the truth?
That's really, I agree with that entirely, and that's the most frustrating thing for me is if everything they said at these meetings was true, then what's the problem? Why don't they want this audio out there? Why can't people hear what they had to say? Why don't they want, quote, their side out there so people know their supposed reasons for not wanting this union in there?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's exactly it. And, you know, like we said, Nelson wasn't the only folks at Dixie Pearl. They're not the only folks who've had issues with them. No Evil Foods have been going after everybody. And I assume once we put this on YouTube with the clips in it, you know, I mean, I don't know, maybe Dixie Pearl and Working People have a lot wider listenership than we do. So maybe they will, maybe we'll be able to slip under the radar. But I wouldn't be surprised if YouTube tries to take it down because No Evil Foods tries to claim that that copyright, you know, and so we are going into. We've got just a couple more minutes before the break before we've got that hard bottom of the hour break. So we are we're talking to the folks with No Evil Food who are fired from No Evil Foods. Can one of y'all just start on telling us what was their justification for firing you?
So I'll start real quick with Courtney. And this kind of plays into COVID a little bit because what happened was after we had lost the union vote, we ended up everybody at the production facility was freaking out because of COVID, and we worked in a very small enclosed environment, so people were worried, and we ended up putting a petition together for hazard pay. And this petition, and the reason that we did that, part of the reason we needed a petition for hazard pay was because the policy that they had rolled out for their version of hazard pay was we had to maintain 90 days of perfect attendance in the middle of this pandemic in order for us to get hazard pay. We had to qualify for hazard pay by having 90 days of perfect attendance first. And so we all knew that was kind of awful, and so this petition is the result of that. And once they found out about the petition and they knew that the petition organizers, many of them, not all, but many of them were also union organizers, they began firing people for stupid reasons. And so Courtney had been fired for a dress code violation. They said that like a pair of pants that she had worn a million times was too short. And then I was fired for a lack of, for not adhering to social distancing guidelines. They said that I wasn't taking social distancing seriously, which is just funny because I was one of the loudest people telling them that they needed to do more about the pandemic.
Yeah, Megan, we are coming up on a break. We're going to let you finish that thought on the other side. This is our bottom of the hour news break. We are coming to you commercial free, except for that, courtesy of the Alabama AFL-CIO. If you've got any questions for us, give us a call at 1-866-494-9866. This is the Valley Labor Report.
You're listening to the Valley Labor Report with David Story and Jacob Morrison.
You call the principal J-Rig, add it up. You call the first, add it up. You call the principal J-Rig, add it up. You call the
All right, welcome back, folks. You're listening to the Valley Labor Report with David Story and Jacob Morrison. I was on the line with a disgruntled caller in the break, so I'm not 100% positive where we left off at. Jacob, you want to take it away?
Yeah, and you'll have to tell us about I was curious to hear about that caller, so we'll.
That's the only bad thing. Well, it's not the only bad thing. It's one of the bad things about broadcasting on a conservative radio show is there's a lot of crazy conservatives out there. I mean, literally.
Well, yeah. So we were where we left off. We were, I think Megan was her name. She was telling us about, what their justification was for her being fired. And Megan and John, they were both fired from No Evil Foods for organizing, obviously, and jumping a bit ahead, but they won the case in front of the labor board. So that they have been vindicated in that they were fired for organizing, but we were going over how the company justified it, because obviously they didn't say that it was for organizing. They said it was for something else. So we were going over that. So finish your thought.
So Megan here. I actually was not fired. It was John and Courtney that were both fired for their organizing efforts. With Courtney, they basically said that she was violating the dress code over a pair of pants that she had worn multiple times to work without any issues. And then as far as John getting fired, they said that it was over social distancing issues, which was just silly in itself because he was one of the main people pointing out to management that it was almost nearly impossible to social distance effectively and still do your job effectively. That was one of the main risks and problems there, which is why we needed the hazard pay. But I'll let John touch on that more.
But yeah, so... with the, sorry, what am I touching on?
You getting fired.
Oh, yeah. So that kind of ties into the NLRB case, because me and Courtney both filed NLRB charges after we were fired, and they were over violations of the NLRA. And I don't want to speak too much for Courtney, but my case and the actual violations of the NLRA revolve around the fact that I had been pulled off the production floor prior to, or actually around the time that they had found out about hazard pay, or the hazard pay petition. So I was pulled off the production floor by the head of HR, and I was interrogated about the petition, which is not exactly something that's legal under the NLRA. And specifically, I was asked if the petition has anything to do with the union drive. As I'm sure you know, anything about like labor laws and especially the NLRA, they're not supposed to do that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Most of the things that the company does in these cases are highly illegal, but they get away with them anyways because a lot of times, people are reluctant to take a stand.
Yeah.
Right. So so what was the process? What was that process like? Because I've never, I'm a very big union advocate and I'm very active in the union, but I've never actually gone through a case in front of the labor board. So talk to us about what that was like. You told us what the violation was. What was it like, kind of like filing that complaint and going, and I'm assuming there were like hearings or things like that. Walk us through that process and what it was like and what the outcome ended up being.
Sure. That's a really good question. So the process itself, before I had actually, because I had thought about it after I was fired, and I was like, okay, now what do I do? And it was especially frustrating for me because I had actually moved to North Carolina to take this job specifically. And so I was sort of like, after I was fired, I was kind of like, stunned in a way. And then as I thought about it, I was sort of hesitant to even file with the NLRB because knowing what I know about the NLRB, and especially over the last few years as it's become increasingly less powerful, I didn't have a lot of faith in actually filing the charge. But I just said, okay, well, what's the worst that could happen? And I just I went with it. And so the process itself starts where You call the NLRB, and then you can call or you can do it online too. You can file online as well. And I had actually filed online, but after you file or you call them, they call you back, and you basically get hooked up with an NLRB investigator. And then this person basically listens to your case. They ask you a lot of questions, and then they ask you if you have any supporting evidence, and if you do, you can submit it through their website, and it just kind of goes from there. And they also do have, and this was kind of surprising to me, they do apparently have subpoena power, which means if your employer or people that you worked with are kind of hesitant or don't really know if they want to talk, the NLRB can kind of persuade them to talk, which is good, especially if you have the truth on your side, and I did, fortunately. So that kind of led to me winning the case, and that was really surprising for me. I didn't expect to actually win. And when I say win, what I mean by that is it didn't actually go to court. We never actually went in front of a judge. The lawyers talked, and No Evil decided to settle out of court. And I think the reason they did that is because they knew that they would have lost if they went to court. And part of the reason that they would have lost, and this is something that I really think is so important to emphasize, is that I had documented everything. I had recordings, I had pictures, I had every email correspondence, I had everything saved and ready to go throughout the whole process, from the day really that I started, but especially after the mask started coming off and I started to see that this company was not what I thought it was. I just started documenting everything, and that is basically what saved the case. Having everything saved and able to send them, and not having to remember anything because it was everything that had happened to me. You know, like if you have the truth on your side, you don't have to really remember a whole lot. You just have to speak what happened, you know, and it's a very easy thing to do.
Right. And, you know, that's important for anybody out there that is considering, or that is in the middle potentially of a union drive, or that is considering starting a union drive. You know, anytime you're in a room with your boss, like, start recording. Alabama is a one-party consent state. You don't have to, if you're in a conversation with your supervisor or anybody else, but, you know, this is the context that we're talking in. If you're in a conversation with somebody, you don't have to get their permission to record them. If you're, you know, like I had a friend one time that I had mentioned something about, you know, have you ever considered organizing? He was telling me about some issues, and he said that he had said something as a joke in front of his boss, and his boss was like, if you even think about starting a union, I will fire you. And I'm like, man, if you had that on tape, like, that would be a golden ticket right there, you know? Like, so make sure that you start, you know, like, if you're even considering going forward, make sure that you're doing like John did and documenting everything, because you'll be able, you know, like John was, you'll be able to win or get them to settle out of court like John did. You know, so that's a really important thing that you hit on, John.
Definitely. Documenting everything is so important. It really is.
Yeah. So where are we at with and y'all may not even want to say, you know, I don't know. Where are y'all at as far as, is there still a drive going on? Are we actively encouraging the workers over there to organize? You know, kind of, and like I say, if that's still kind of under the radar, then just say no, we're not doing it.
Well, it's hard for me to say for sure whether or not there's a drive going on right now. I wouldn't necessarily say that there's not an interest in it, but it's so hard to say because they have had so much turnover since all of this started.
Yeah, I mean, that's
between the union drive and purging people over that, and then the COVID response. It's a little difficult to say, but part of the NLRB settlement involves them posting up something in a common area in the facility, basically stating that they have the right to organize. They have the right to organize specifically with the UFCW or any other union. The flyer also mentions my name, and it says that they're not going to retaliate against people. It's a very boilerplate kind of thing, but if somebody is casually over there by their kombucha dispenser reading this and they see it, then maybe they'll kind of get an
Maybe it
interest
sparks
in
an
it.
interest. Yeah, that's the unfortunate part about terrible companies like that is the turnover is generally so high.
Yep.
Either they're terminating people or people just get sick and tired of dealing with their horse crap that they leave. And so it's difficult to sustain, an organizing effort there. And we say it all the time. Well, good companies, generally a decent company, a good company that treats their employees properly, that gives them a voice in the job, they don't need a union. They don't have a union. The companies that you get the union that you deserve. When you start treating people like crap, that's when you start getting, talks of a union in place.
Right.
So,
So
apparently No Evil Foods is actually
pretty evil. Yeah. So Nelson, you've been pretty quiet most of the time. We had you jump in when we had your talked about the stuff with the copyright and them trying to get your show taken down. As you've gone through, you've had multiple episodes with the former workers from No Evil Foods. I'm interested in kind of any thoughts that you would have, after having kind of gone through this process with them, being now kind of towards the end of at least these workers' journey with this company and with this drive. If a drive continues, it'll be kind of they won't be there because they're not working there anymore. So I'm interested in what you had, what your kind of thoughts are coming away, and if anybody's listening, they want to ask a question. 1-866-494-9866 is the phone number. So Nelson, what are your thoughts?
I thought the entire thing, first off, I want to say to Joan and Megan and Courtney, y'all are extremely brave for doing this. They like to say that our generation is lazy and entitled and whatnot, but y'all really took on a giant. I didn't know that they were funded by venture capitalists until later on, so y'all really took on like a giant and held your ground and did something great. And I've never worked for a company that had a union. I've never been a union member, et cetera. So I had no idea the process to go through to form a union. All I've done is just read what is documented history books and whatnot. But it really opened my eyes to just the problems in this country when it comes to workers trying to form a union. Like, I study political science and I research the Taft-Hartley Act and things like that, and how that needs to go away. And it just really brick by brick, they completely dismantled, it seems like, the process almost made it almost impossible to try and form. We're going into the Lochner era of unionization. They don't want people to form unions. And like I said, I didn't grow up in a union household. I don't know with anyone. I think my mom might have been in the nurses union back in the day in California and New York, but there's no one that I've been able to talk to about unions. So I've just been really curious, and y'all and Valley Labor have really opened my eyes to the struggle of the modern day labor movement. And my thoughts are I think that this has been extremely educational, and I hope that people that listen to y'all and all the podcasts that have done this have an idea now of what to expect going into a union drive. And I just want to say thanks, because your episode has been extremely popular. People have really enjoyed it. I know we've all enjoyed it. So stay strong, y'all. I think it's great what y'all try to do. If there's any other stuff going on, we'd love to have you back on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No problem.
Love you guys.
Yeah.
I expressed some pretty some opinions on the podcast that I don't know if I want to repeat them to a radio audience because of just other stuff in general. But I'm pretty militant when it comes to a lot of things. So I've been watching the great Italian American pro-union show, The Sopranos. So I have a lot of ideas of how to help people with their union drives from Tony Soprano. So I think that the more militant I think that unions get, the better. I think that you need to start what y'all do, standing up for the bosses, because they're not your friend. Your boss. I tried to explain this to people. Your boss is not your friend. You're all replaceable. you're just a number to these people. They do not care about you. And to kind of piggyback on what Dave said is like, you know, companies that are nice and, you know, treat you right, you know, you don't really have a union, but when everything starts going bad, you see their true colors. Like when they start losing their profits and they start slipping, et cetera, even during now with COVID and shutdowns, the first thing they do is cut labor costs. And the first thing they do with that is start firing people. So the only time, anytime workers have protection is with the labor union. So they really need to, we need to start looking at our bosses as not family. I hate when managers and bosses are like, we're all a family. It really happens in like small businesses, like mom and pop operations. So like, you know, we're a family, you know, we're blah, blah, blah. It's like, I would not fire my mom. Like, let's stop telling me that you're family. I'm Italian American. I know what family means. So like, don't get me with that crap that we're a family. I mean, you're not my family. So I think that the message coming forward needs to be like, you know, your boss doesn't care about you. You're not family. The only friends you have in this are your fellow workers. Yeah, and so you need to organize.
Well, I mean, there's a reason why we call each other brothers and sisters in the union, because we are family, because we understand what it's like to struggle alongside each other for better health care, for better wages, for better benefits, and for a voice in the workplace. You know, and that is what family is about, is taking care of each other whenever we're down. And the company, you know, but I don't care what they're paying you.
Right.
Look at what they've done to No Evil Foods, or look at what they've done to these workers at No Evil Foods, and it's there's no family there. Their only consideration is making $1 off of your labor. Right. Simple as that.
Yeah. And it's really important to point out that No Evil Foods is not. They don't market themselves like, you know, Walmart or Ingalls or Kroger. This is a company that markets itself very much under that mentality where the boss is your friend. They brag throughout these meetings about how they have an open door policy and they pay a living wage. And actually, they paid a certified living wage until over the summer when they lost that certification because of the union busting. But they really stressed that, and they talked about how they had a family meal once a week, and they used that word. It was a family meal. That's how they phrased it. And there were free snacks in the break room, and they, like I said, they now have a kombucha dispenser. They got all this fancy stuff, and they make it really sound like you're part of this family, but you're also part of this family that is very expendable. And if a company that can brand themselves like this can do this to their workers and treat them this expendable, then you had better bet that the company that you work for that doesn't market themselves like this is definitely going to treat you like this.
Yep, that's exactly right, and you know that was a good place to that's a good kind of bow on it. We had a caller, Dave Lehive is the David. What is he's a brother of David's in the Machinists Union. What is Dave's position in the Machinists Union?
Dave is the communications director for IAM District 141, which oversees a lot of the aerospace industry as far as transportation, the stewards and stewardess. I don't know what they call it. I'm not in that industry, but he's basically the communications director for 141. He does an absolutely amazing job.
He does a great job, and he's been really he's been listening to the show every week and commenting and sharing, and we appreciate his support and helping us out. And he had a comment that I thought was that I thought was good and important and relevant. So Dave, you're on the line. You know what was it that you wanted to add to the conversation here?
Well, first off, I just want to wish you guys a Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, brother.
And you guys do a fantastic job on the show. The reason why I was calling was, with all the conversation today, I think one of the important parts of organizing is we're missing the part of the National Labor Relations Board. We want to make sure that we have the right people in there that will listen to our needs and concerns while we go into these organizing campaigns.
Yeah, and that's something I was going to point that out earlier on, but there was so much conversation going on, and one of the things that they mentioned was the fact that he didn't think that he would would be able to win a case through the NLRB, and the reason that is because the NLRB is appointed by the president, and unfortunately, the president has appointed a bunch of corporate whores on the NLRB to basically knock down everything that any workers bring before them, and part of taking the bad thing is the NLRB was set up for the express intent of protecting workers' rights.
Right.
And we've got corporate lawyers serving on the board that could care less about the workers' rights. So to your point, you're absolutely correct. The only way we're ever going to get any favorable cases back at the NLRB is to get somebody in there that actually cares about workers and not about maintaining corporate power, corporate status.
And, talking about the NLRB, we had a really good interview with a Jacobin contributing editor, Paul Prescott, about the NLRB and about some of their really anti-worker decisions that they have come out with under the Trump administration. It's a really great. Paul does a good job. He did a similar interview on some other shows, but you can go and find that on our YouTube channel as well if you want to learn more about the function of the NLRB and some of the extremely kind of bad cases that the bad precedents that they've set under the Trump administration as well. It's important to it's important to know and important, like Dave said, to understand. Like Dave and David said, to understand who appoints the NLRB. And it's the president, and you're not going to get worker-friendly NLRB folks under a Trump administration.
Well, I mean, not that you're not going to. We haven't.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we can see. You can go back and watch that interview and see. See the results. Like it's not like David said. It's not like will it or won't it be? It's like, okay, we've ran the experiment and we've got the results, and they're bad for workers.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. I'm off the airline. I'm off the airline sector, and we operate under a whole different bunch of labor rules, and we still, even when I was organizing way back when, still had trouble trying to get a union on a property. And I really feel for the workers that are out there that are trying to organize their company. It's a tough struggle, but it's a worthwhile struggle. I mean, I've been a union member for over 20 years now. And it's the best thing that I ever did. I know it's the best thing our members ever did was to get themselves union representation. So I commend those that are actually fighting for the right thing, and that's getting a union shop on the proproperty.
Yeah. Thanks for calling in, brother. Is there anything else you need
to
say, brother?
No, I do appreciate what you guys are doing. I think it's great that you guys are down there informing people in the South about the positive side of unions, and keep doing what you're doing. I think you guys are getting a great following out there, and you're getting people that are tuning in and starting to hear the facts and understanding that unions are a good thing, and they can help the workers. And just keep working, because I think we're going to turn this country around, and it's going to be labor unions that are going to be able to do it.
You're right.
So,
absolutely.
Thanks again, guys. I appreciate it. You guys have a great day. Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Dave.
Thanks, Brother Dave. Have a happy New Year.
Yep.
You too now. Bye-bye.
Now, one of y'all, I think from No Evil Foods, I think y'all was about to jump in and say something. Uh-oh. Oops. Well, we dropped everybody. Well, one of the folks from...
we've got about 4 minutes.
Yeah, we've only got about 4 minutes. Wow. So, if they... Oh, we got him calling back in. Yep, so we're about to put them back on the air, and now they are on the air. Okay.
Hey, sorry about that.
Oh, no, that was our fault. So what was y'all about to one of y'all was about to interject and say something. So what was that, and for kind of y'all's final thoughts
got about,
there?
3 minutes left.
Yep, I just wanted to say that what the caller was saying about the NLRB is so true, and that was what was the most surprising thing for me, is that going into it, I didn't think that we would have a victory, especially under the Trump NLRB, but we did, and that kind of speaks to how badly they messed up, or No Evil Foods messed up, and how overwhelming the evidence was against them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, what you see, and not to get too far in the weeds, but the Trump appointees are at the national level, and so what you see is at the regional levels, like where you were initially filed a report, they are still worker friendly. And it's the same way here in Birmingham. You got a good chance, if you got a good case, of winning that. The problem comes in is generally a larger company with a lot of funds will appeal those decisions to the higher the higher boards, and that's where it gets shot down every time. Luckily, y'all had a good enough case. It sounds like probably the corporate lawyer told them, you're going to lose this one way or the other, because I've seen that happen numerous times where they say, you better cut your losses now because you're going to pay more in the end than you are up if you just pay it out right now and cut your losses. So congratulations to y'all. I mean, that is wonderful to hear people fighting and winning out there.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, yeah. Well, we really appreciate y'all taking the time to call in and talk to us. We enjoyed it. I think it's been educational for the audience. You know, we kind of went in deep with this one story, but it's not just this. This happens every time, almost just about every time. You know, these stories. You can just play it on repeat whenever you've got a union drive. And so that's why it's helpful to go in really deep on some individual stories, because they're indicative of trends. You know, it's not just these folks, it's what these folks represent. And,
it's part of inoculation. That's something that it's constantly needs to be done, is inoculate. Tell people what they're going to expect going in, because it's brutal.
Right, yeah, because
it is brutal.
And that's important. You know, inoculation, that's like what a vaccine does. You know, people talking about vaccines a lot. It inoculates you against the disease so that your body is ready to fight it. What we're doing and what these clips are going to do, make sure you're following us on YouTube so you can hear the clips when we put this out on YouTube. But you know, if you are doing a union drive and you've never heard some of the vicious anti-union, anti-worker stuff that your boss will be willing to do, you might get scared and you might think, oh, maybe they're right. So that's why we want to educate you and show you up front what the boss is going to do, so that you know what to expect, so that you see the lies before they tell it to you, and you know that they're lies when you hear it. And you know, that's why stuff like this is so important. That's why we are so appreciative to the folks at No Evil Foods for talking to us. We appreciate folks like Nelson and Max on other podcasts doing this educational work as well. So we've really enjoyed the conversation today. Folks, make sure you tune in next week. Make sure you're following us online. And we will see you next week with the Valley Labor Report. You know, we really appreciate your time this week and every week. If you want to see what we're up to throughout the week, you know, get our snide quips about the news of the day, then you should follow us on social media. We're on Facebook at facebook.com/The Valley Labor Report. We're on Twitter at Labor Reporters. I'm on Twitter at JacobM_AL. David is on Twitter at Radical Unionist. That's spelled RADICL Unionist. If you missed part of the show and want to go back and watch it later, you can search YouTube for The Valley Labor Report and subscribe to our channel. You should really do that. Help us get those subscriber numbers up there. Maybe eventually we'll be able to make some ad revenue on the YouTubes. That'd be great. You can go back and watch the full show there, and we clip segments and release them throughout the week as well. So, you know, you can get just, if you don't want to listen to the whole show, but a topic sounds interesting, we release them by, you know, as it makes sense in little clips throughout the week. So really succinct kind of stuff there. We also upload the program on more than 11 different podcasting apps. So to see if we are on your listening platform of choice, go to the Valley Labor Report. transistor.fm/subscribe. We also have a website, thevalleylaborreport.org. You can go there. We've got, you know, our catalog of videos and stuff. May at some point have a way to contribute to us directly there instead of going through Patreon. Maybe have some articles at some point. And if you appreciate our work and want to help us stay on the air, the best way to do that right now is to support us on Patreon. You can give us a couple bucks a month there. It really goes a long way. That's patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report.